So, we've been talking about all these different ways that technology is changing how we think about content creation.
Yeah.
And you shared this really interesting idea with me about something that I think a lot of our listeners might not even realize is like a
It's the
thing.
average thing.
Yeah, like a huge opportunity. And it has to do with, our rural setting here in West Virginia.
Right.
And this growing demand for like authentic video and audio. And I was
Sure.
I was really intrigued by this. So I wanted to kind of dig into it a little bit more today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because, we're surrounded by it here,
Right.
and we take it for granted, but it's becoming a real commodity.
So let's for folks who maybe aren't familiar with this idea, let's talk about like what exactly is driving this demand. Like
Right.
who's looking for this content and why?
So, we live in a world where so much of the media we consume is digital.
Right.
And as advanced as digital technology has become, it still struggles to replicate the nuances
Right.
of the real world,
Especially, like natural settings.
especially natural settings, right?
Yeah.
So think about it. It's like, game developers,
Mm-hmm.
they're creating these incredibly immersive virtual worlds.
Right.
But to make those worlds truly believable, they need authentic ambient sound.
Right.
They need the sound of wind rustling through leaves,
Yeah.
or birds chirping in the forest, or a babbling brook.
Like you can't just like have somebody in a studio make mouth noises and have that
Exactly.
convincing.
Like, doesn't sound right. It doesn't
Yeah.
have that organic quality.
Yeah.
And the same goes for other fields like AI development.
Uh-huh.
AI models need massive amounts of data to train on, and that includes audio and video data.
Right.
And the more diverse and authentic that data is, the better the AI performs.
Okay, so it's not just about entertainment, it's also about like
No.
technological advancement.
Absolutely, yeah.
So game developers, AI developers, who else is like
Oh, and even like filmmakers,
okay.
especially indie filmmakers who may not have the budget for elaborate sound design.
Right.
They're turning to these real-world recordings
Mm.
to add a layer of authenticity to their films.
So it's interesting because it seems like we're almost coming full circle in a way.
Yeah.
Like, there was this time when everything had to be like super polished and perfect.
Right.
And now there's this appreciation for
For the real,
yeah,
the raw.
the imperfections.
Yeah, the little serendipitous moments that you can't plan for.
So give me some specific examples because you're talking about ambient sound. What are some of the types of sounds or videos that are like in high demand right now?
I mean, you would be surprised at how much value there is in the everyday sounds that we take for granted.
Uh-huh.
Like, just think about the sound of rain on a tin roof,
Okay.
or the chirp of crickets on a summer night,
Oh.
the distant rumble of a tractor, or the sound of wind chimes blowing in the breeze.
So it's not like we're talking about like, recording a hit song.
Right.
It's really about capturing these
Capturing the ambiance.
the ambiance, the essence.
The essence of a place.
Okay.
And visually too.
Yeah.
Like a shot of an old barn with the paint peeling, or winding country road.
Yeah.
These are things that filmmakers and game developers and all sorts of creators are looking for.
And this is where it gets really exciting because you were telling me that you don't necessarily need a ton of expensive equipment to do this, right?
Not at all.
Like what can somebody get started with?
I mean, honestly, you can get started with just your smartphone.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The cameras and microphones on smartphones are so good these days
Right.
that you can capture really high quality audio and video.
Now, are there like any kind of like entry level pieces of equipment that you would recommend if somebody wanted to maybe step it up a notch?
Sure. Yeah. So if you want to improve your audio quality, you could invest in a lavalier mic.
Okay.
Something like a Rode SmartLav Plus
Mm.
is a really affordable option. And if you want to record even higher quality audio, a portable recorder like a Zoom H1N
Uh-huh.
is a great choice.
Okay.
And for video,
Uh-huh.
if you want to get some aerial shots, a drone
Yeah.
like a DJI Mini is a good option.
Okay.
But the key is, start with what you have.
Right.
Experiment.
Right.
Don't be afraid to just get out there and start recording.
And what's interesting about that too is like we talk about content creation a lot on this show.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get really intimidated because they think like, oh, I need the fancy camera. I need the expensive software.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is like, that's not necessarily
Not at all.
the case.
No, and in fact, sometimes the simpler the better, because you're capturing that raw authenticity.
Yeah.
That's so valuable.
So let's talk about like the business side of this, because it's
Okay.
one thing to capture, it's another thing to actually
Right.
like make some money off of it or share it with the world. So what are some of the platforms or places where people can actually like sell or license their footage and audio?
There are a bunch of online platforms that cater specifically to this kind of content.
Okay.
One of the biggest is Pond5.
Okay.
And Pond5 is basically a huge marketplace for stock footage and audio.
Okay.
So you can upload your clips, tag them with relevant keywords,
Right.
and then people can search for and license your content.
Okay. So like if I had a clip of like,
Right.
I don't know, a thunderstorm rolling in over the mountains,
Right.
I could upload that to Pond5 and tag it with like Thunderstorm Mountains, West Virginia.
Exactly.
And then somebody making a movie could
Right.
find that and license it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they actually have a category specifically for rustic content.
Oh, wow. So that's perfect for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. What are some other platforms?
Another one is artlist.io.
Okay.
Now, Artlist is a bit more premium.
Okay.
They focus on really high quality content,
Okay.
and they license their content to subscribers.
Okay.
So as a contributor, you can either get paid a fixed fee for each clip that you upload,
Right. Sure.
or you can earn recurring revenue based on how often your content is licensed.
Okay. So that's a little different business model than Pond5.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. What else?
So if you're specifically interested in sound effects and ambient recordings,
Okay.
Envato Elements has a section called Audio Jungle.
Okay.
And they really emphasize high-resolution WAV files
Okay.
and clear, detailed descriptions of your sounds.
Okay. So like,
So instead of just saying, rain sound,
huh?
you would say something like steady rain on tin roof,
Right.
recorded at night with distant thunder.
Okay. So be really specific
Be really
so
specific.
that people can find it.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Any other platforms that we should mention?
Yeah. So Storyblocks is another popular one.
Okay.
And they're subscription based.
Okay.
And they're always looking for royalty-free footage and audio.
Okay.
And they really like short, loopable clips.
Okay.
So things like a drone shot of a country road
Uh-huh.
or a sound of a frog croaking.
Okay. So stuff that could be like easily repeated,
Exactly.
a video game or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. And then was there one more that you...
Oh, yeah, Black Box.
Black Box, okay.
Now, Black Box is interesting because they act as a distributor.
Okay.
So you upload your content to Black Box, and they distribute it to multiple marketplaces,
Oh, wow. So it's like
including places like Pond5 and Shutterstock.
it's like a middleman.
Yeah, exactly.
So that saves you the hassle of having to manage all these different...
Exactly.
Like, that's really interesting. Okay, so we've got Pond5artlist.io and Envato Elements Storyblocks, Black Box.
Any other kind of like key takeaways or tips for somebody who might be thinking about
Yeah.
getting into this?
One of the most important things is labeling your content clearly.
Okay.
I mean, think like a buyer.
Uh-huh.
What words are they going to search for
Right.
when they're looking for a specific sound or a specific type of footage?
Right.
So, if you have a video of a back road in West Virginia,
Uh-huh.
don't just title it Back Road.
Okay.
Title it West Virginia Back Road,
Right.
foggy morning, no traffic.
Okay. Be super specific.
Super specific.
Okay. And the same would go for audio, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So really put yourself in the shoes of
Yes.
the buyer.
Of the buyer.
Okay.
So that they can find what they're looking for.
I'm really fascinated by this because it's like, we think about West Virginia, we think about
Right.
the beauty of the state, the natural resources,
Uh-huh.
but we don't always think about like
Right.
the sounds and the sights as being like a commodity that could actually generate income.
Right.
And so it's really interesting to think about this as like a new form of like
Yeah.
digital agriculture almost.
Yeah. I like that.
Like it's a way to leverage the
resources.
the resources of our state
Yeah.
in this new and exciting way.
And it's accessible to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't need to be a professional filmmaker.
Right.
You don't need to have a fancy studio.
Right.
You just need a smartphone and a willingness to
Get out there.
Get out there and capture the beauty that's around us.
And maybe this is a good takeaway for our listeners as we wrap up this conversation is to just start paying attention to the sounds around you, the sights around you, the things that maybe you take for granted because they could be somebody else's goal. Like that sound of the wind in the trees or the the creek rushing by your house.
Right.
That could be exactly what somebody needs to complete their video game or
to make their film come alive.
Yeah.
Or to create a realistic soundscape for their virtual world.
It's just a really cool idea, and I think it really speaks to the power of technology to create new opportunities in unexpected places.
Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing this with me and with our listeners. I think it's given us all a lot to think about.
My pleasure.
And for those of you listening, if you're interested in learning more about this or any of the other topics that we cover on the West Virginia Media Lab podcast, make sure to subscribe to our show and check out our website for more information.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. The West Virginia Media Lab is all about celebrating our state and its people, businesses, stories, news, and folklore. If you love West Virginia like we do, be sure to comment below, then subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell to stay connected. Until next time, stay wild, wonderful, West Virginia.